Live NFL trivia every Wednesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge for a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. Making a trade is always an exciting moment. It's a chance to upgrade your roster, it's a chance for players to get a fresh start and to make a new impression. And especially in a player-for-player swap, it's rare enough where, when it happens, it's kinda cool. But perhaps there's no more feeling with trades more awkward than when you trade away a guy and acquire someone else, only for the trade to be voided for some reason, forcing the player to return to their original team. There are many reasons why a trade fails after going through. Sometimes, in the case of Kansas City Chiefs tight end Walter White, it's because he just flat out refused to show up to the St. Louis Cardinals. You can learn more about that train wreck by clicking the card in the upper right corner. However, most of the time, it's because of a failed physical, where the player is battling an injury, the team makes the trade hoping that the injury isn't too severe, and as it turns out, the medical report looks worse than anticipated. What's even more bizarre is when said player has never had a problem, and an injury appears completely out of nowhere that was diagnosed by the new team's doctor that winds up canceling the trade, much to the dismay of the original organization. Well, in 2006, that's exactly what happened in a highly controversial failed trade between the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns. This is running back Lee Suggs, and in 2006, the Jets canceled a trade that would have made him wear the green and white, even though, in the eyes of the Browns doctors, he was ready to play, and was healthy enough to miss absolutely nothing. And the Jets' explanation for why they canceled the trade? Well, it's kind of ridiculous. This is the story behind the most controversial cancel trade in the history of the Jets franchise. Before I talk about the failed trade, we need some context to understand why the Jets wanted to acquire said player in the first place. And to do this, we have to talk about this man right here, otherwise known as one of the greatest running backs in the history of the sport. This is Curtis Martin, and I would be here all day if I listed every single accolade that the man accomplished in his career. After 3 seasons with the New England Patriots, Jets head coach Bill Parcells, who was in love with the man in New England, acquired him in a trade in 1998. Over the next 8 seasons, Martin would establish himself as one of the greatest players in the history of the New York Jets, as over those 8 years, he would run for 10,302 yards and 58 touchdowns, all while making 3 Pro Bowls in New York and while being named a first-team All-Pro in 2004 by leading the NFL with 1,697 rushing yards. Martin wasn't exactly the fastest running back in the world by this point, but entering the 2006 season, under new head coach Eric Mangini, the Jets had a plan for a 2-headed monster at running back. They'd have the incredibly fast, shifty, and agile Leon Washington, who they drafted in the 4th round of the 2006 NFL Draft out of Florida State, and they'd have Martin back there to handle the short yardage up the middle stuff. Keep in mind that in 2005, Martin scored 5 touchdowns, and the 5 touchdowns added up to a combined yardage total of 6 yards, so he knew his role by this point. And yes, his 2005 season was, by all accounts, not good, and made it look like Father Time was catching up to him, as he had a career-worst 735 rushing yards, which was the first time ever that he finished his season with under 1,000 rushing yards, and he averaged a career-worst 3.3 yards per carry. However, the Jets were still hopeful in Martin, and there wasn't going to be any deviation from the plan, even under a new coaching staff. That was until training camp. Because once camp rolled around at the end of July, the Jets realized that they had a serious problem on their hands. And that was the fact that Curtis Martin, the 4th leading rusher in NFL history, and the man who started 119 consecutive games for the team at one point, was not looking healthy at all. He got arthroscopic surgery on his right knee in December of 2005, and still had not recovered fully from the injury. Now, during minicamp in June, even though Martin was held out of drills by Mangini, Martin said that there was no reason to be concerned, saying, "This isn't the first injury that I've come off of. Most of the years I played in the league, I've come off an injury." But 1 month later, the tone was a lot different, as Martin was placed on the physically unable to perform list, and there was no timetable for his return. Just like that, the Jets needed a new power back. Their anchor for the past decade, one of the most reliable halfbacks in football, and one of the greatest players in franchise history, was sidelined, and no one knew for how long. And the Jets needed someone to fill his role. Fortunately for them, they had just the guy in mind to do this. Time for the Jets to go to Cleveland, Ohio, to find what they were looking for. This is running back Lee Suggs, and he was drafted by the Browns out of Virginia Tech in the 4th round of the 2003 NFL Draft. And on December 28, 2003, in the final game of his rookie season, Suggs made himself known to the football world, when in a shocking 22-14 victory over the Cincinnati Bengals, he had 186 rushing yards and over 7 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns. Ending his rookie season on an incredibly high note, he followed that up in 2004 with a pretty solid season, where even though he only started 3 games, he made himself a presence in the rotation as a solid power back, running for 744 yards. Now, was he great by any means? Absolutely not. He had a major fumbling issue, as he coughed the ball up 6 times on 199 carries that season, and he was one of those running backs where you knew after 3 or 4 rushes what kind of a day it was going to be, as he was either going to play well or he wasn't, and you knew right away which version you were getting. But for what he was asked to do, which was come into the rotation and get a few carries a game and pick up yardage by going up the middle, he was fine. Heck, he led the Browns in rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, and yards from scrimmage during that 2004 campaign, so that's got to count for something. But in 2005, when Romeo Crennel became the head coach, and when Maurice Carthan became the offensive coordinator, Suggs was phased out of the game plan. Some of that was due to injuries, as he missed the first half of the 2003 season with a non-football related injury, missed multiple stretches of the 2004 season with injuries, and missed multiple stretches of the 2005 season with injuries. Some of that was due to the acquisition of Reuben Drones from the Denver Broncos, who was coming off of a great season in Denver under Mike Shanahan's scheme that allowed him to run for 1,240 yards and 6 touchdowns in 2004, and made literally every single running back look good. However, it was clear that Suggs was no longer in the plans for the team, as in 2005, he only carried the ball 8 times, averaging 1 rushing attempt per game among the 8 games he was active, which was a far cry from his 199 carries and nearly 20 carries per game from 2004. Combine that with the drafting of Jerome Harrison in the 2006 NFL Draft, and it looked like Suggs was going to be on his way out. But as they say, one man's trash is another man's treasure, and the New York Jets saw something in Suggs that Romeo Crennel just wasn't seeing. When the Browns looked at Suggs, they saw an injury-prone running back who had his moments, but just couldn't stay healthy, having dealt with injuries to his shoulder, neck, toe, ankle, and thumb over his first 3 seasons, as well as cervical spinal stenosis, and couldn't reliably hold on to the football. When the Jets looked at Suggs, they saw a great power back who was tough to bring down on first contact, who could run up the middle but also cut to the outside when appropriate, and who could fill in for Curtis Martin while he was indefinitely out with his right knee injury. This injury concern was amplified when Martin did not directly deny reports that his cartilage damage was so bad that it was bone on bone. If he's not denying that, then that's troubling. And with all of that in mind, on August 14th, 2006, the Jets and Browns, otherwise known as the 2 franchises that Bill Belichick did not work out with, worked out a trade sending Lee Suggs to the Jets in exchange for cornerback Derek Strait. It was a 1-for-1 swap. And the Jets, understandably, were thrilled about this trade. General Manager Mike Tannenbaum said, "We've added more competition and depth at the running back position by acquiring Lee Suggs. We're committed to continually evaluating opportunities to improve our football team." And Suggs was so excited about the trade as well that he was en route to New York immediately after it was announced, saying, "It's a fresh start, and that's what I really wanted. I get to go somewhere with a clean slate, to a team that wants me and seems to need me." Talk about a not-so-subtle shot at Cleveland for how they barely used him in 2005. But nevertheless, the deal was worked out. The Jets have their Curtis Martin replacement for the time being, and in a normal world, that's the end of our story. But the very next day, to the shock of everyone, and to the anger of the Browns, the trade, for some reason, got canceled. And nobody knows why. Normally when a trade gets canceled, it's because of a failed physical, and that was the case here. Lee Suggs failed his physical with the Jets, and head coach Eric Mangini said on the result, "We have a whole series of tests that we do, and we were very thorough with the process. He just didn't pass those tests. Each team has a criteria they set up that they believe is what's important and what's needed to be competitive. I'm very comfortable with the tests we have set up." Now on the surface, this seems like a complete non-story. It's pretty cut and dry, and it's happened many times before. Suggs took the physical and failed the physical, and now he's heading back to Cleveland in what has to be an incredibly awkward move. Heck, this isn't even the first time I've done a story on a failed physical with the Browns. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Here's the problem with this one, though. Suggs was completely healthy. You see, the Browns had no idea why the trade got canceled. Suggs was at every single practice. He participated at every single event in minicamp, in training camp and in the preseason. Heck, he even played in the team's first preseason game against the Philadelphia Eagles a few days before the trade. This was the one time that Suggs was actually healthy. Browns general manager Phil Savage was completely perplexed, saying medical opinions can vary from team to team, and obviously, this is one team's opinion. And to make matters even crazier, when the Browns asked the Jets why Suggs failed the physical, do you want to know what the Jets said? Absolutely nothing. They gave no reason for why he failed, and gave no explanations as to what the issue was. So now, the Browns had a running back that they thought was healthy that they traded off to New York, and the Jets refused to take him on because he wasn't healthy. But the Jets were refusing to tell the Browns why exactly he wasn't healthy. Seems a bit fishy and suspicious, doesn't it? Even head coach Romeo Crennel seemed to think so, saying that he had issue with how the Jets handled this, and said, "There's a possibility of anything and everything. I'm not ruling anything out. I might talk to Eric Mangini and find out what's going on." This weirdly botched trade also forced Crennel to issue a hilarious backtrack on taking Suggs back, saying that the Browns still wanted him, and saying, if we didn't want him, we'd cut him. We think he can compete, and we're going to give him a shot to win the number 2 job. That's the way it was before the trade, and that's the way it still is. We're going to plug him in right where he was when he left here. Ah yes, you wanted him so much that you tried to get rid of him. Nobody's buying that, Romeo. But going back to the Jets, this botched trade gets even worse for them. Because as it turns out, nobody on the Jets knew what the heck they were doing. None of the other running backs knew that the trade was no longer on, and none of the coaches informed them of the situation. The day that the trade got voided, Derek Blaylock was asked about his thoughts on the situation, and Blaylock gave the reporters a deer-in-the-headlights look, because he genuinely had no idea what was happening. He thought that Suggs was still on the Jets. Not even Suggs himself knew why he failed, as he was never given a reason by the organization. As Suggs said, "I was shocked. I practiced throughout training camp and all of the spring. I did all the workouts, passed the physicals here, and everything was fine. Then I went up to New York, and I failed. So yes, I was shocked." And to add insult to injury, no pun intended, he wasn't even informed by a member of the Jets front office or coaching staff or medical team that he failed. He was informed by an intern on a car ride. Are you actually kidding me? The Jets literally bungled this at every step of the way. Commissioner Paul Tagliabue only had a few days left until his retirement before he handed the torch over to Roger Goodell. But you have to wonder if this happened at any other time besides that weird transition period, if the Jets would have been forced to complete this trade and go through with it. Just to recap where we are in this entire debacle, because it's a lot. The Jets traded for Lee Suggs, then decided to cancel the trade because of a failed physical. However, Suggs was completely healthy, and had participated in every event so far this offseason. The Browns had no idea why Suggs failed the physical, as the Jets never told the Browns this. Suggs had no idea why he failed the physical, as the Jets never told him this. And the Jets let Suggs know that he failed said physical by having one of their interns break the news to him away from the team facility. The fact that this trade got voided when there was literally no evidence to suggest that Suggs failed the physical, even if the Jets doctors were to literally just make up a reason, is somewhat shocking, because this doesn't seem like a failed physical, and instead seems like a case of the Jets getting cold feet and backing out of the trade under the guise of a failed physical. I'm genuinely trying to think of any other reason why this trade wouldn't go through, and the Jets would not even disclose the information to any party involved. And honestly, I've got nothing. It's like the professor that lets you know what grade you got on a writing assignment by writing down a number, but by giving no feedback, no notes, and no rubric. He just says, "Here's your grade," and that's that. Nobody likes that. How do you arrive at that number? What is your justification? Well, the same thing applies here, except instead of one person refusing to provide justification and by just pulling test results out of thin air, it's an entire organization that makes up a multi-billion-dollar league and can impact a person's entire career, reputation, and salary. Suggs didn't do anything else of note in the NFL. He was cut by the Browns shortly after this failed trade, and ended up signing with the Miami Dolphins, playing 4 games and getting 6 carries for 26 yards before never playing again. But even though Suggs only lasted 4 seasons in the NFL, he has a lasting legacy to this day because of his role in one of the most infamous trade debacles in the over 60-year history of the New York Jets, and I do not say that lightly. So what's the moral of the story here? Honesty is the best policy. Be transparent, If you're going to do something and fail someone during a test, tell them why they failed. Tell them how you arrived at your conclusion. Failing someone during a physical, but refusing to disclose to literally anyone, including the impacted team or the impacted player, why they failed the physical, is incredibly slimy behavior, and was a bad indication of what was to come in the Eric Mangini era in the Big Apple. Because even though Suggs failed the physical back in August of 2006, the Jets failed at something bigger, and that is human decency. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at Jaguar Gator 9. To see college football videos, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.